Okay, this is a 49ers update. I promise that I'll show proof that I am not in a prison cell. But first, I need to tell you about RJ Gillen. He's the guy there standing right over Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, 49ers assistant general manager. The Minnesota Vikings have requested permission to interview him for their open GM role. Now, remember that the Vikings' former general manager came from the 49ers and has returned to the 49ers front office. That's Kwesi Adolfo Mensa. Gillen's been with the 49ers since 2015. And, well, there's a chance that that decade plus tenure might end. There are other candidates, though. Rich McKay, who is the assistant GM of the Rams, is one of the candidates. Dave Ziegler, the assistant GM of the Titans, is another one of the candidates. And so is Chargers assistant GM Chad Alexander. All right. I'm not in a prison cell. I'm at San Francisco International Airport. You guys know the room. I try to angle it so you guys can see out of the club room here, so I can prove that I'm not being detained. It's just a good spot to do a live as soon as I got off of the plane because I am headed to 49ers rookie minicamp today. But first, we need to discuss the fact that this is Brock Purdy's football team. This is from my interview with Greg Cosell yesterday. We're going to talk about how the 49ers have officially constructed this all around Brock Purdy, but have a listen to Greg and his evaluation of the 49ers quarterback. Brock Purdy, now theoretically, if Mike Evans stays healthy, he's going to have that X receiver again. Hasn't really had a true X since week 7 of 2024. They've added some other personnel and De'Zhaun Stribling. How do you see this playing out for Brock Purdy? Just given the fact that I feel that he was playing with like one hand tied behind his back last year toward the end with all those injuries. So how do you see the outlook for him now that the 49ers have bolstered the arsenal around him?
Again, I'm just going to say this before it'll get me to Purdy. In some ways, I think we've lost the ability to celebrate quarterbacks in this league who are very efficient as ball distributors and executors of an offense. Obviously, we get really excited about the Mahomes, the Allens, the guys, Lamar for years, the guys who run around and make those special plays. And there's no question because of the evolution of defenses and the issues they present that particular ability has become a bigger factor in the league. There's no question about that. But the ability to drop back and execute a pass game at a high level. I mean, you know how it is. People talk about quarterbacks coming in the league and they say, well, he doesn't have great traits because in their mind, that means he doesn't throw it hard and he doesn't run around. But, it's a trait to be able to execute an offense at a high level efficiently and distribute the football. That's a trait, So otherwise, what Drew Brees and Tom Brady didn't have any good traits. I mean, that's ultimately, and that's what Brock Purdy is. He's an executor and a distributor. Now, he's not unathletic, but obviously at his best, and if the Niner offense is to work to its highest level, it's because Purdy will be willing and dealing from the pocket. And he's really, really good at that, and it's an offense that's built on what we call pure progression reading. So it's very much a function of the play design. And I guarantee that Kyle Shanahan is thought of as one of the first, second, or third best doing that in the league. You know that. So, it's an efficient style of offense. That's the way they want to play. They want the run game to be sustaining and efficient. They want the pass game to be the same. And Purdy's really, really good at that. And so I've never understood what the issue was with Purdy. He's really good. He's not Josh Allen. If you want Josh Allen, then you might not like Brock Purdy. But Brock Purdy is really good at what he is, and that's what he is.
All right, leave it to Greg Cosell to bring reason to the Brock Purdy discussion. The full interview, 40-plus minutes up yesterday. We talked about all the 49ers rookies, and then we kind of wrapped things up by bringing it back to Brock Purdy. And I think that when you look at the 49ers team construction over the course of this offseason, they have a roster that is now firmly in line, firmly built around number 13. The big investment on the offensive side of the ball this offseason was in the wide receiver position. And the 49ers now have a tall, notably tall wide receiver core. And I think that this is just really important to notice from an overhead look at the 49ers. They've got Mike Evans, who's 6'5", and they obviously added De'Zhaun Stribling, who is 6'2", maybe 6'3", about the height of Jawan Jennings, but significantly faster. Christian Kirk, also part of this team. So anybody here that has a color shading in the wide receiver room is a new player. Mike Evans gets the gold color shading because he is a foundational pillar for the 49ers at the X receiver position. But for the first time since week 7 of 2024, Brock Purdy has a true X receiver in Mike Evans. And Greg and I talked about this. This is going to change the math for the 49ers. The geometry, the safety has to worry about somebody like Mike Evans, even if it might be a running formation. So the 49ers are going to have adaptability at the line of scrimmage. And it's not like Brock Purdy has lacked in efficiency over the course of his NFL career. You want to be further to the right and further up. I've taken this sample since 2022, since Purdy entered the league. He is in the upper right corner of this graph. If you want to sort this by EPA per play, as you can see, Brock Purdy, number 1 in the entire NFL. He has not lacked for efficiency. He has been one of the best in the game, even despite the fact that the 49ers have not given him the weaponry needed to, I think, maximize this offense. In 2023, they did, obviously. Not in 2024, not in 2025. So now, back to the depth chart. You have a taller receiver in Mike Evans. And Purdy has thrown with such good touch over the course of his NFL career, over the course of his college career. He threw to some big targets in college back when he was at Iowa State. Charlie Kolar, the tight end who signed with the Chargers this offseason, good example of that. But Purdy has been able to throw the fade ball. He's been able to throw the touch pass downfield with great accuracy. And Mike Evans has shown that he's somebody who can catch that type of football. Purdy and Jawan Jennings had a good connection. Obviously, it's not going to be Purdy and Jawan Jennings anymore, but Purdy and De'Zhaun Stribling are the two. I mean, number 13 and number 15. Stribling's going to be wearing the 15. 49ers will maintain size in the big slot, which is important. Now they have a little bit more speed. They have ranked over the past 2 years dead last combined in average separation at the time of catch or incompletion. So we're going to get our first look at De'Zhaun Stribling today at the 49ers rookie minicamp, and he is one of the big tickets for the future if the 49ers want to fix the separation issue around Brock Purdy. I think that they brought in Christian Kirk, the veteran, as a 1-year stopgap at a smaller slot position. He's a vet. He's a professional. He can help De'Zhaun Stribling adapt to one of the more inside wide receiver spots, and Mike Evans can help train him in the outside wide receiver craft, because I think ultimately De'Zhaun Stribling has the speed at 4.36 and the size at 6'2 or 6'3 to play on the outside as well. And I think as a 49ers receiver, you have to be cross-trained in all of the positions. So between Pearsall, because we haven't mentioned him yet, Mike Evans, and De'Zhaun Stribling, the 49ers have 3 wideouts now, all over 6 feet, including 2 over 6'2 and 1 who is 6'5. That is very, very important to note when we talk about building weaponry around Brock Purdy. Of course, Christian McCaffrey is always a big part of the 49ers offensive weaponry, but I would also really urge people to look beyond Christian in how the 49ers are constructing their run game. And I think this is important for the play action. And, Purdy did what he did last year. He finished, number 2 in QBR behind only Drake May. He did what he did last year, despite the fact that the 49ers had their worst run game of the Shanahan era as far as efficiency went, and they had their worst separation over the past 2 years. They didn't have receivers. It all obviously came crashing down in that finale against the Seattle Seahawks. One of the great defenses that we've ever seen. The 49ers just didn't have any firepower. They weren't getting open. They couldn't run the ball around Brock Purdy. So what do? Naturally, you try to fix the biggest weaknesses, right? Weakness 1, the separation that we talked about. Well, the 49ers have invested a lot to try to fix that between Mike Evans, De'Zhaun Stribling, Christian Kirk, and obviously the return to health for Ricky Pearsall is going to be critical in that regard. Issue two, the run game, is very tied to the receivers that the 49ers got. And this is where I could go back to the math, to the geometry. The problem running the ball last year wasn't Christian McCaffrey. The problem running the ball, by and large, there was a weakness at left guard, and the 49ers did take a swing at that. There's going to be a new starting left guard this year. We don't know who yet, but it wasn't the offensive line. The offensive line blocked fine for the 49ers. The data, the tape, and also open field yardage average numbers tell us that the problem for the 49ers run game, the reason that it was so relatively inefficient, was because they couldn't break out those explosive runs due to poor blocking on the perimeter. The receivers for the 49ers were not good blockers. Ricky Pearsall was hurt for most of the year. Juwan Jennings played hurt most of the year. On paper, he was one of their best blockers. Brandon Ayuk, they signed him in 2024 to be one of the elite blocking X receivers in the NFL. He didn't play at all. He defected from the football team. Kendrick Bourne was a terrible blocker. I mean, and George Kittle obviously missed half the season for the 49ers. They just were not up to par when it came to blocking on the perimeter last year. And this is where you see one of the biggest renovations. And again, we're going to have our first look at De'Zhaun Stribling over the course of this mini camp coming up today and tomorrow. I'm about to head down here from the airport, from my little prison cell in the airport from the United Club. But I'm about to head down from the airport to Santa Clara, and we'll see Stribling. But they think he's the best blocking receiver in this 2026 NFL rookie class. We know that Mike Evans at 6'5", 230 is a hell of a blocker. Just the math of the field, though, if Evans plays X, that is the split end, that is the tether position of Kyle Shanahan's offense. We've seen Julio Jones play in that spot. We've seen Brandon Ayuk, obviously, for the 49ers. The best Shanahan offenses have not coincidentally featured a strong X receiver, because that X receiver draws not only usually the best defensive cornerback on the opposing defense, but also draws the safety, at least some attention from the middle field safety over toward him. And that in exchange opens up lanes in the run game. So 49ers lack of rushing efficiency last year can be directly traced back to their struggles at receiver. It's not just the pass game that the struggles at receiver impacted. It was the run game as well, because it's all connected. And you've got Stribling now, and you have Mike Evans if you are the 49ers. And this should open up that, plus the success in the pass game that we would expect is coming if Brock Purdy actually has guys to throw to. That should open up more lanes for Christian McCaffrey. And then Christian's going to be 30. That's why you have Kaelon Black. And another reason that you've got Kaelon Black is because you're evolving as a run game schematically. Now, even if, everything that we just talked about was even, right? If everything that we just talked about was humming well for the 49ers, the league can also adjust. And the league has adjusted, not necessarily to San Francisco per se, but to outside zone rushing attacks, to the speed passing attacks of the league. There's a lot more lightness and fleetness of foot on the defensive side of the ball. The counter to that, and we're starting to see this around the NFL, and I talked about this with Greg in our interview yesterday, is to jumbo up on offense. So we're seeing 13 personnel. McVay and the Rams did a lot of that last year. We're seeing a lot of 6 O-line sets. The Texans did a ton of that. The Dolphins ran Daniel Brunskill as a tight end or a 6th offensive lineman, the former 49er. Power. There's like this reversion back to power. 49ers have been running light to the outside with speed. Now they doubled their gap scheme power rate last year. That is the direction in which this is heading. So that means new left guard for the 49ers. We'll see if it's Carver Willis, Robert Jones, maybe even Brett Toth. We'll see if Toth can make a push at center. Could be a guy that could up the 49ers success rate at multiple positions of this offensive line. But you also have to have backs that fit the power mold. And Kaelon Black, I think, better fits the power mold than the outside zone mold. And they used the 3rd round pick on him. So that, to me, is very, very significant. And, of course, Christian McCaffrey fits the power mold, because Christian McCaffrey, he came up through Stanford running almost exclusively power. I would say he's almost more at home running power than he is the outside zone. So if that run game takes the step that we would expect it to, given the slight change of direction. I'm not saying they're abandoning outside zone. I'm saying they're diversifying it. If the run game takes advantage of the changing league, the lighter defenses, and zags while there's some zigging going on, and finds a way to greater efficiency, that should help the pass game. Whereas the pass game with the new receivers should also help the run game, and you have a symbiotic play action relationship. And you know what? That's great news for the 49ers, because over the course of the last half decade or so, Brock Purdy has already been one of the very best in the league. I think that I'm looking at only 2025 here, where he was still one of the best in the league. Well, if the 49ers are able to fix the supporting cast around Purdy, and they've invested a ton in it over the course of this offseason, well, then I think you could see Purdy surge to even greater heights. And it's already been pretty damn high for Brock Purdy. So finally, after years of construction, the 49ers have officially built this roster around Brock Purdy with some tall receivers, with a diversified run game that's going to be able to go gap scheme and better set up play action in the modern NFL. And of course, with Christian McCaffrey, but reinforcements behind him, starting with Kaelon Black in that key running back position. It is very, very important that the running back can catch the football in this 49ers offense. And we're going to take a look at Black's catching abilities in just a few minutes. I have to leave the airport now. Going to head down to Santa Clara. We will speak to Raheem Morris for the first time today at 49ers rookie minicamp. So big report coming up right after that. Hit that subscribe button. Go and check out the Greg Cosell interview, which dropped yesterday. Full interview available on the channel.